The clock struck midnight, and the hospital lay cloaked in an unsettling silence. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows that danced across the sterile white walls. Sarah, the lone nurse on duty, walked down the dimly lit corridor, her footsteps echoing softly as she made her rounds. Each sound seemed amplified in the stillness, creating a palpable tension that hung in the air. She glanced at the clock again, its ticking a constant reminder of time dragging on. The night shift was always quiet, but tonight felt different. A chill crept into the atmosphere, sending shivers down her spine. As she passed room after room, she could see the faint outlines of patients sleeping peacefully, unaware of the strange energy that enveloped the hospital. Dark corners loomed ahead, where shadows pooled like secrets waiting to be revealed. The only noise came from a distant beeping monitor, its rhythmic pulse a stark contrast to the eerie calm surrounding her. Occasionally, Sarah would catch a glimpse of movement out of the corner of her eye, just a shadow flitting away, but when she turned to look, nothing was there. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. It was as if the very walls of the hospital held their breath, holding on to untold stories and lingering fears. Little did she know that this night would mark the beginning of an unimaginable nightmare, one that would plunge her into darkness both literal and figurative, challenging her courage in ways she never anticipated. Sarah had always been dedicated to her job as a nurse. She loved helping people and took pride in her role, especially during the long night shifts when fewer staff were around. She believed that caring for patients during those quiet hours was both a privilege and a responsibility. With her dark hair pulled back into a neat bun and her scrubs neatly pressed, she moved confidently through the ward, checking on patients with compassion. However, this particular shift began to weigh heavily on her. Each passing moment felt laden with an uncomfortable tension, and Sarah's usual resolve wavered. The cold air seemed to carry whispers of unease, stirring questions in her mind. Was it just fatigue playing tricks on her, or was there something more sinister lurking in the darkness? As she entered the nurse's station, surrounded by patient charts and medical equipment, she felt an unsettling chill creep down her spine. Her thoughts drifted to the stories she'd heard from other nurses about the hospital's strange past, tales of shadows moving on their own and patients who claimed to see figures in the corners of their rooms. Though she had always brushed these off as mere ghost stories, it was hard to shake the feeling that something wasn't right tonight. Determined to stay focused, Sarah took a deep breath and reminded herself of her duty. She resolved to push through the eerie sensations and maintain her professionalism, unaware that whatever haunted the hospital was beginning to stir, dark forces driven by an unknown agenda. As Sarah moved from room to room, the eerie stillness of the hospital turned increasingly strange. The fluorescent lights flickered above her, casting intermittent shadows that played tricks on her mind. She paused, squinting at the lights, thinking that perhaps they just needed new bulbs. However, each time the lights dimmed and then burst back to life, a rush of cold air seemed to follow, creeping in around her and leaving her feeling exposed. In addition to the flickering lights, odd noises began to echo through the halls. At first, it was just faint rustling, as if someone were shuffling through papers in a nearby office. But soon, it escalated into distant thuds and echoing whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, a cruel reminder that she was alone in the depths of the hospital. Each sound made her heart race faster, igniting her imagination with vivid images of what might lie just beyond her line of sight. As she checked on a sleeping patient in room 204, she heard a loud crash from the supply closet nearby. Startled, she turned quickly, but when she raced to investigate, she found nothing amiss. The supplies were neatly organized, untouched. Shaking off the unsettling feeling that clung to her like a shroud, Sarah tried to push through the oddities but couldn't shake the growing sense that something was not right. Something dark lurked just outside her perception, waiting for the perfect moment to unveil itself. Just as Sarah steadied herself after the unsettling noises, an unexpected darkness fell over the hospital. All at once, the lights flickered and went out, plunging her into almost complete blackness. A soft beeping from the medical equipment around her faded into silence, leaving behind an eerie stillness that seemed to swallow the very air she breathed. Panic gripped her heart as she fumbled for her flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom like a thin lifeline. In that moment, a chill electrified the air, intensifying her sense of isolation. She remembered the security cameras, the ones that usually provided a watchful eye over the wards. She rushed to check the monitor but found only static, all feeds had gone black simultaneously. "Is anyone out there?" she called, her voice echoing softly in the deserted corridor. The absence of response was deafening. The hospital felt alive with an unsettling energy, as if it were holding its breath. Each creak of the building and the distant sound of wind outside intensified her anxiety. Standing in darkness, she felt utterly alone. Uncertainty gnawed at her as shadows pooled in the corners of her vision, making her question whether she was truly hiding from something, or if it was hiding from her. For a fleeting moment, Sarah considered fleeing to the front desk, but dread rooted her in place. She couldn't shake the feeling that whatever lurked in the dark was now aware of her presence. Determined to confront her fears, Sarah took a deep breath and gripped her flashlight tightly. The beam of light flickered as she stepped hesitantly into the dark corridor, illuminating just enough to guide her forward but not enough to chase away the shadows that seemed to twist into ominous shapes along the walls. Curiosity mixed with trepidation as she moved deeper into the heart of the hospital, driven by an instinct that urged her to uncover what was hidden in the darkness. With each cautious step, her heart pounded louder in her ears, drowning out the unsettling stillness around her. She made her way toward the supply closet where she had heard the crash earlier, hoping to find a logical explanation for the jarring sound. As she reached the entrance, a cold gust swept past her, causing her breath to hitch in her throat. The door was slightly ajar, swaying just enough to make it appear as if something, or someone, had recently exited. Pushing the door open further, Sarah peeked inside, scanning the disheveled shelves filled with medical supplies. A sense of dread washed over her when she noticed something unusual. A pile of bandages lay on the floor as if hastily discarded. Was someone here? Her mind raced with questions while fear gnawed at her gut. Just then, she heard another noise, soft and muffled, a sound that sent chills down her spine. It wasn't from within the closet but from somewhere farther down the hallway. Mustering all her courage, Sarah felt compelled to follow the sound, realizing that whatever was hidden in this blackened environment would soon reveal itself. As Sarah ventured further down the dimly lit corridor, the air grew heavier, thick with an electric tension that made the hair on the back of her neck stand on end. Her flashlight flickered uncertainly, and shadows danced along the walls, creating shapes that seemed to shift and sway as if alive. Whispering voices echoed softly around her, indistinct yet haunting, a chorus of murmurs that sent chills racing down her spine. She paused, straining to catch fragments of the whispers. "Help us," one voice pleaded faintly, while another seemed to echo back with an eerie, mocking laugh. Sarah's heart raced as she felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched, a prickling awareness that something, or someone, was lurking just beyond her sight. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of a shadow darting past the edge of her flashlight's beam. It was gone in an instant, leaving her questioning her own sanity. Was it merely a trick of the light, or did a figure truly flit through the darkness? Doubt clawed at her mind as she took a cautious step forward, each footfall echoing ominously in the deserted hall. Then, without warning, she felt a cold breeze sweep past her, chilling her to the bone. The whispers intensified, swirling around her like a tempest of unseen specters. She turned quickly but saw only darkness. The oppressive feeling of dread wrapped around her like a shroud as she realized that whatever haunted these halls was not just watching, it was waiting for her to make a mistake. Desperate to escape this suffocating presence, Sarah pressed on deeper into the shadows, hoping to uncover the truth behind the hospital's dark secrets. As Sarah continued her investigation, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong with the patients in the darkened hospital. The usual sounds of soft breathing and the occasional rustle of sheets had been replaced by unsettling noises, muffled cries and whispers rising from the rooms she passed. Her heart raced with dread as she approached room 312, where the commotion seemed loudest. Pushing the door open cautiously, she found Mr. Johnson, an elderly patient known for his calm demeanor, sitting up in bed, wide-eyed and trembling. "They're coming for me," he gasped, his voice laced with panic. Sarah rushed to his side, her flashlight beam shaking as she tried to comfort him. "Who's coming, Mr. Johnson? You're safe here." But he could only shake his head, pointing toward the shadows in the corner of the room. "I saw them. They're watching me." His terror was palpable, and as Sarah looked around, she felt a chill grip her heart. The darkness seemed to thicken as if it were alive, and she could almost feel unseen eyes staring from every corner. As she moved to reassure another patient down the hall, she noticed that they too had transformed into restless figures. Some were whispering to themselves, while others clawed at their sheets in fear. A sense of urgency washed over Sarah. These weren't merely frightened patients but victims of the same haunting presence that lurked in the shadows. The echoes of their distress mingled with the unsettling whispers she had heard earlier, creating a cacophony of anxiety that heightened her own fears. Desperate to maintain control, Sarah knew she had to act quickly. Whatever was tormenting the hospital was now affecting those she swore to protect. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah hurried down the darkened corridor, the whispers of her frightened patients echoing in her mind. She needed answers about the hospital's unsettling past, so she decided it was time to confront the records room, a place she had avoided until now. Armed with her flashlight, she pushed open the door and stepped inside, surrounded by towering stacks of dusty files and old medical charts. As she sifted through the papers, a sense of dread washed over her when she stumbled upon a file labeled "Disappeared Patients." Her heart raced as she opened it, revealing reports dating back decades of patients who had inexplicably vanished without a trace. The account spoke of strange occurrences and sightings of shadowy figures, similar to what she had experienced that very night. Each case report mentioned whispered voices heard just before the disappearances, a haunting connection that sent chills up her spine. Further into the folder, Sarah discovered a shocking detail. Many of these patients were linked to an experimental treatment program that had been quietly terminated after numerous complaints and accusations of malpractice. The last entry in the file described how a group of patients had protested against their treatment in the very same hall she was now walking through, claiming they were part of something far more sinister. Suddenly, the weight of this dark history settled heavily on her shoulders. This was not just an abandoned treatment, it was a chilling legacy that seemed to haunt every corner of the hospital. As Sarah pieced together horrifying truths, she felt a rush of urgency. If there was any hope of saving her patients from the same fate, she needed to confront whatever lurked within this malevolent institution. With a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins, Sarah turned to leave the records room, her heart pounding as she clutched her flashlight like a lifeline. The weight of the hospital's dark history pressed down on her shoulders, and a primal instinct urged her to escape whatever malevolent force lurked in the shadows. Just as she reached for the door, an icy gust of wind swept through the room, slamming it shut with a deafening bang. Frozen in place, she felt an overwhelming presence materialize behind her, dark and oppressive. The shadows gathered into a swirling mass, taking on a sinister form that loomed over her. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she turned slowly to face it, her flashlight beam trembling against the encroaching darkness. The air crackled with energy, and she could hear whispers rising again, urgent voices echoing with despair. "Help us," they pleaded in unison, their tones twisted with anguish and rage. Suddenly, the figure lunged forward, its face a grotesque mask of sorrow and wrath. Sarah stumbled backward, scrambling to find an escape route as terror gripped her heart. "Leave me alone," she shouted defiantly, but her voice trembled under the weight of fear. In that moment of desperation, she remembered the stories from the records, the patients who had vanished without a trace. As if sensing her thoughts, the entity surged closer, reaching out with claw-like hands that shimmered with an eerie light. With every ounce of strength left in her body, Sarah dashed toward the door as it creaked open on its own accord. Just outside, she heard one last desperate whisper that echoed in the stillness, "You can't escape." Bursting into the hallway, Sarah raced forward, determined to save herself and protect her patients from this dark legacy that threatened to consume them all. Sarah burst into the main hall, her pulse racing as she struggled to regain her composure. The oppressive darkness seemed to recede slightly as she reached the nurse's station, where the flickering emergency lights provided a dim glow. She collapsed into a chair, breathless and shaken, grappling with the memories of the terrifying encounter in the records room. The haunting whispers still echoed in her mind, and she could almost feel the presence of the entity lurking just beyond her vision. In the days that followed, Sarah reported the events of that night to her superiors, but they dismissed her experience as fatigue-induced paranoia. Despite her attempts to explain the strange behaviors of the patients and the chilling history she uncovered, her concerns were met with skepticism. Yet Sarah knew what she had faced was real, and a part of her could not let it go. Determined to uncover the hospital's dark secrets, she began researching on her own, delving into old newspaper articles and records that spoke of patient disappearances and mysterious occurrences. Each piece of evidence only deepened her resolve but also left her with more questions. Though she returned to work, Sarah felt forever changed by that night. The shadows in the hospital now held a different meaning for her, and she could no longer shake the feeling that something sinister still lurked within its walls. As she walked through the halls, she often heard whispers, some days more loudly than others, and wondered if she would ever truly escape the hospital's haunting legacy or if it would continue to claim souls long after she had left.